This one could blow your mind and you may have to go and do your own research on it. So have you heard of the Access to End of Life and Palliative Care and Treatment Bill that's going through Parliament? Probably not. Why would you? It's being voted on, or it's going through Parliament this Friday. What does this bill do and say? Well, it's about creating the requirement for all NHS facilities, hospitals, doctors, etc., to be required to offer end-of-life and palliative care to all patients and to offer them better care at end of life, which sounds on the face of it a great thing. However, there's a few holes in this bill. So, for example, they can only put people on this end-of-life and palliative care when they are diagnosed as being terminally ill. But there is no definition of what they mean by terminally ill. No definition of certain medical issues. No definition of how long that terminal illness might take until they die. No definition of what they actually mean by terminally ill. So in theory, it could just mean somebody that's 85 years old getting old and they think they're going to die within 3 years. That makes them terminally ill. They don't have to provide any written or documented evidence of this. They don't have to provide a second opinion, so one doctor can make that diagnosis. And if that patient should then die, the relatives of the patient cannot seek any legal recourse against either that decision or the hospital. So, to give you a completely hypothetical situation, an elderly person who's otherwise in reasonably good health, but is elderly, 82, 83, 84, 85, 90, whatever it might be, could have a relatively minor chest infection, could have had a fall and badly bruised their arm or broken a wrist or whatever. They could go into hospital for treatment. A doctor could see them and could say, well, this person is terminally ill because they're very old and we believe that at some point within the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, they're going to die. At that point, they could be put on end-of-life care. What does end-of-life care mean? Well, it means that when they're admitted to hospital, they could be given sedative-type drugs. They could potentially be not fed. They could potentially be coached through to end of life. And the relatives, unless they just physically check them out of that hospital, can't do anything about that. Now, of course, that's probably unlikely to happen in many circumstances, but it is a possibility. It can happen. There are no safeguards within this bill to stop that happening. We had a lot of issues within the illness that we had a few years ago where people were put on end-of-life care protocols, both in care homes and in hospitals, were administered with drugs such as midazolam and ended up dying. And there's a lot of questions about whether they could, should or would have died. This is very similar to that. On the sound of it, it sounds nice and cuddly and caring and helpful. We are going to help people with their end-of-life management. But surely that should only be applicable to people that genuinely are at the end of their life. But there are no safeguards around that. One doctor can diagnose you as terminally ill with no real parameters for what that means, no real timescale for what that means, and on the basis of that, put you on end-of-life and palliative care. That's what this bill apparently says. And that's being voted on this Friday. Now, when you put that alongside the fact that we also have going through Parliament the effectively euthanasia bill, the end-of-life bill, the right to die bill, the right for people to choose to die bill, could that be seen as an attack on the weak, frail and elderly in society? Could that be seen as two measures that are looking to effectively reduce long-term NHS costs and burdens on society by hastening the end of life of thousands of older people. In Canada, they brought in the Medical Assistance in Dying Bill, roughly speaking, about 10 years or so ago. Since that came in 10 years, 62,000 people have been medically assisted in dying in Canada, and that number is increasing every single year, and who it's rolled out to has been increasing every single year. So now people potentially just with depression can enlist on that program. Are we going down the same slippery path in this country? Are we going to basically be saying that anyone that's elderly that goes into hospital could potentially be put on end-of-life care, whether they should be or not? And as I say, I'm not criticising NHS or doctors here or saying that they're uncaring or murderers or that they're going to do this, because 99.9% of them, that's absolutely not the case. But if you allow a law to come in that means that that can happen, then inevitably it will happen. And whether it happens to one person or 1,000 people doesn't make any difference. You have to have safeguards. You have to have provisions. Surely there should be a definition, a precise legal definition of what they mean by terminally ill. Surely there should be a timescale of what they mean by that. Surely it should be signed off by 2 doctors, not just one. Surely the relatives should be able to question that and demand a second, third and fourth opinion. Surely the relatives should be able to, if they want, check that person out of holiday, check that person out of hospital and take them home with them. You have to have these safeguards in place. It's just common sense, but apparently they're not. So this bill is in Parliament on Friday. Look it up. The Assisted Care in Dying and Palliative Bill, or something along those lines. I missed it out. Go back to the beginning and watch what I said it was called. Really, really worrying. Really worrying where we're headed.